Good evening. My name is Tarangana Thapa, and I'm a senior at Arlington High School. Welcome to After the March, Arlington students discuss activism in America. Today, we're here to discuss post-election politics and how the nation is on the path to inevitable change. And most importantly, we're here today to discuss how these national policies will be affecting our local and high school community, and what we can do to make sure that our community continues to embrace diversity and strives for complete inclusion and integration of all of our students, regardless of the policies on the national level. We have here with us 4 other students from Arlington High School who are representing different aspects of the student body. Adam Deacon, who is the co-president of the Young Democrats Club. Sophie Plotkin, who is she's a Hispanic immigrant, also a student at Arlington High School. Mandana Mojahed, who is a representative from the Young Feminist Alliance and also Iranian American. And Niari Galvez, who's representing the Greater Boston Students of Color Achievement Network. Thank you all for being with us here today. The first thing that we want to talk about is the policies that we've been having ever since our new administration. The election happened. Adam was actually here with us during our debate, presidential debate, and we've accepted that the citizens have democratically chosen our new president. And no matter where we all may be on this political spectrum, one thing we can agree on is the fact that all of us will be affected by these policies passed by this administration. And in some way, the marches and protests that have been happening, inspired after this election, have been some of the most visible and direct evidence of the effects of this new administration. A lot of the students from our local communities also participated in the Boston March, as well as the large DC March. So I wanted to first of all start off by asking, is this march a fad? Are all of these new marches and grassroots movements, are these a fad? Are these going to be lasting? Or is this short term? How long do you think this will go on? What do you think, Adam?
Well, I think this is definitely not a fad, and anytime you see political assembly in the scale that we saw with the Women's March, that's not only a reaction to what we see in the current political climate, that's an act of patriotism. To go and to demand a more perfect union, I think that sort of action, you can't label it a fad. I think it's many things. I think it's the beginnings of a movement. I think there's a lot of passion in that movement. There's a lot of really good ideas in that movement. And as we hone that movement, I think that we'll see that the Women's March was really just a kicking off point of sort of a patriotic new movement in this country.
Absolutely. Mandana?
Yes, I totally agree with Adam. It's 100% not a fad. We've seen in recent years, more than years in the past, where the idea of equality, feminism is really taking hold in our society, and it's a very important one because the reality is that women are not equal as men as they should be. And I think the march, for me at least, was a moment where men or others who possibly define themselves as another gender, or women who define themselves as female, it's a way for them to understand that yes, we need to be recognized, our voice needs to be heard. You need to stand with us in solidarity rather than just appreciating us. It's more than just appreciation that we need. We need people to stand behind us as we fight forward for equality.
Well, first of all, I don't think marches are a fad. Marches have been used to protest things since as long as humans have been around. Obviously, the most obvious is the civil rights movement of the 60s, but I think this is just a continuation and under a different but related subject. And I also feel like these marches are important because as a member of the student body, most of us couldn't vote for this president. We had no say, and these marches give us a way to inform the government. Maybe, well, we don't agree with what's happening, so.
Yeah, that's very true. Anything you want to add to that, Nira?
Yes, I wanted to just say that I agree with everyone's point here. I do believe that marches are such an effective way to get your voice across, and not even just your voice, but you yourself, you moving and you interacting with other people who believe in something you do is such a powerful thing within itself. I know for myself, my grandparents were a part of the civil rights movement, so marches are something that we've known about and that have been something that they use to get equal education. So I feel like for me, as a Black woman who's growing up in this world, I feel like it's such a great way for us as young people to get together and do something effective.
Yeah, now you touched on something very interesting about how these marches, although they were for civil rights, your grandparents were marching for education. You know? So women in history have been known to, be advocating for not just typical women's rights issues, but other issues, other social issues going on. Do you think that the march that we had in Washington, do you think that this is just about those women's rights, or is it, again, on a larger scale about something else that's going on? Is there a bigger message behind all this? What do you guys think?
Oh, for me, I feel like it's such a larger scale. There were so many things going on that day, and I thought it was such a beautiful thing to see. Like, I myself didn't have the opportunity to go, but seeing it on CNN and just watching it and seeing all the people come together and having people like Alicia Keys and having Elizabeth Warren, like seeing her, like that was such a beautiful thing to see. So I did love it.
Yeah. And I actually went down to DC the day of the inauguration. Didn't go out that day, but the next day for the march. And the speeches weren't just about women's rights. They talked about climate change. They talked about abortion rights. They talked about freedom of speech. There were a lot of Native Americans who talked about their rights and the Dakota Pipeline. And I think the great thing about these marches is that it's brought all of those seemingly separate topics under one umbrella, and they're stronger as a result.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. And these marches are to symbolize and to send a message to our president and to the government, saying that we're not going to stay silent no matter what. If you want to throw something at us that we don't necessarily agree with, we're going to democratically, rise above that, talk about it. I remember when I was at the march in Boston, I remember hearing, we can do this every week if you want us to, because at that point it felt like every weekend was a march for whether it was women's, science, against the Muslim ban. It was just a bunch of people who had a common belief, just gathering together, and it was really beautiful.
Definitely, I agree. I think there are so many facets of freedom, and I think that was evident at the Women's March. I think gender equality is definitely one of them. But while that's a super important issue and maybe one that was at the forefront of the Women's March, you also saw that core to what freedom is economic security, freedom to worship how you please, freedom to love who you love, freedom to live in a livable climate. And I think that there's so much in this movement that realistically has been brought on by President Trump's election and the outrage that incurred. There's so much potential in this movement, I believe, and the Women's March was such an important catalyst for that, as it brought attention, deservingly so, to women's rights. And we see the March for Science has brought attention to science and climate change. And I really think that so many things need to be addressed. And really these marches that we've seen have done a really good job of doing it. I mean, they've generated coverage, and I think that's such a positive start.
Going off what you were saying, is this new administration has been kind of silencing the people by taking away their right to use social media for speaking to the people publicly, and these things. Do you think that these marches is kind of a way for the people and for these organizations, whether it be for climate change or other beliefs, for them to express themselves and kind of recuperate from that being suppressed with their social media?
Yeah, absolutely. We know with this president that he likes to label things as like fake news, maybe when he doesn't like agree with them, and though they are usually fact. These marches, at least for me, have brought together people even past social media, because though social media is a very important aspect in our society because everyone has it, everyone uses it, being able to see people in person, going out, taking the time, making signs, and standing in the like cold weather, in the warm weather, whenever, and protesting their belief. You know, when I went to the march on the Muslim ban, and I was sitting in like the T, and I was seeing everyone with their signs, and it kind of like brought tears to my eyes, because sometimes I think our initial belief is that we're kind of like alone in the world. And then when you see people going out, like standing behind you and saying, no, we're not gonna like let this happen, it's a really strong thing.
It definitely is. And you touched on the Muslim ban, and obviously it's been affecting a large population in the United States. Do you have any examples of, or even experiences of you seeing people affected in our local community, or on a personal level?
Yeah, on a personal level, when I was younger, definitely going through elementary school, there were noticeable differences between me and some of the other kids. Like, my skin tone was a little tanner, I had, let's say, darker hair, and I was kind of viewed as like an outsider. And I remember, like, specifically, like, this one boy like repeatedly called me terrorist because I'm Middle Eastern, because I'm Muslim, you know, and that's the kind of like arrogant thinking that kind of like divides us and like creates this like hate. And with these marches, with you know, pointing out times of like wrong behavior, where we're like stereotyping and bringing about hatred, with these marches, it kind of, not ignoring the past of like what I've been through and what that other Muslims have been through, but like them kind of being empowered too, that okay, that happened, but now I'm looking to the future. I'm seeing what's in front of me with people coming together, people that may not believe in, let's say, what I believe in, but we're being able to unite with these people, you know.
Definitely. And I think there is a lot of diversity in our town and school that we've been able to see. I just wanted to gauge, how diverse do you really think our school is? What do you think, based on race, religion, etc.?
I mean, based on race alone, it's definitely a largely white town. There are minorities. It's not like you go to school and if you see someone who's like different, it's like, oh my God, whoa, what's happening? But it's definitely mostly white, but liberal white. So for the most part, we live in the New England bubble where it's not that we don't realize the difference, but we almost don't quite understand just how different it is outside of our town.
I remember, you know, coming to Arlington, it was, you know, it was really nice. People were really nice, accepting, and you know, there are like minority groups which are like really nice, but also like when you leave Arlington and like let's say you go to Georgia, it's drastically different. In my history class, we FaceTimed with students in Georgia, and we kind of like talked to them, and we were kind of bridging that gap, or the stereotypes we have in our own heads about people in the South. You know, we're bridging that and trying to communicate with them, be like, oh, like, how is life there? Like, you know,
I know for myself, I am a MECO student, so starting and being in Arlington Public Schools, I've known since first grade that I was Black. Before I started, like, as a child, you don't have that connotation of knowing who you are. You're just happy with playing with kids and being yourself. But when I did enter the school system in Arlington, I realized who I was, what I believed in, and how it is difficult some days. I know for myself, not just being a MECO student, but being one of the very small minority groups in the school, it is hard. A lot of times, like, kids do leave the school and kids can't take it because we are faced with a lot, and we try to create clubs, and a lot of people are welcoming, but at times we can't do it. And I speak on the behalf of some of the kids that I know who have left Arlington Public Schools because of things they face, but we're moving forward. And I hope that with this new president, we can find the time to come together and use this as a basis to be stronger and to build off of that.
Definitely. Do you feel that there are programs or other things that could be instituted to make sure that in the future programs like MECO and these students feel more welcome, and what do you think about those?
I do think that having GBSO is such a great thing, but also having programs like Voices United and probably other programs to build off of that will make it better. I feel like there is a bridge and there is a gap between a lot of the minority students and the white students, because they fear, because of things they've heard or coming from the middle school, which does have a very large issue with diversity. And coming from that, it's hard to be confident in a place where you feel so left out. If you don't see someone that looks like you, don't see someone that you're just scared. So I feel like that's one of the things.
Can you quickly explain what GBSO Can is?
Yes. So the club that I'm a part of is the Greater Boston Student of Color Association, national. It is a club where we basically talk, and we talk about biases, and we talk about things going on in the world, people like being allies and being able to have a conversation and address things that are the elephants in the room and that people are so scared to come in contact with. And I feel like this is the time to have conversation. It's the time to have these marches. It's the time to speak out, because our voices obviously aren't being heard, and we have to take action.
So one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on about the Trump administration is that, some of the policies that he has may not always be, promoting the working woman idea and values that we've discovered and like developed in this 20th century. And yet in his cabinet, we don't see a lot of women again, but one of his most trusted unofficial advisors is his own daughter, who herself claims that she is a very large proponent of women, the working woman, the working mother, and has herself been involved a lot in working and promoting those things, she says. What do you think that Trump can do to change the way that his administration is looked upon by the public about him promoting these rights for women and the working woman image of the 20th century? Adam?
Well, I think to be seen as promoting rights for women, Donald Trump has to promote rights for women, and he hasn't done that. So I think he can fret all he wants about his image. Right now, he does not have an image as pro-woman, as feminist, and I think like that starts with empowering women. That starts with really he would need to reverse course on reproductive rights. He would need to reverse course on, he would have to make a priority out of child education, out of child care programs, and if he had some sort of landmark legislation, you think about Obama, you think about the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, and Barack Obama really did a lot to promote gender equality in this country, and I think that Donald Trump, in one of his many crises of image, he hasn't done anything for women. I mean, look at his cabinet. Look at the things he has said about women, I think to be any kind of champion of women in any kind of way, Donald Trump really needs to embrace a 21st century agenda when it comes to women's rights.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I totally agree with what Adam is saying. He hasn't shown us that he's even for anything that helps us. You see and you have these little girls watching him, and this is what they think that their future is. This man holds the United States in his hand, and this is what he showed us so far. He showed us that he can come up with a ban that keeps out people. He thinks that building a wall, shutting us in, and keeping people out is going to solve problems. That's not how the way the world works, and that's just not how the world works in general. So,
As a Hispanic American immigrant woman in this community, do you feel that the community is any different from the policies on the national level? Or what do you think about our local community and the way that it treats the working woman image?
Well, as a working woman in Arlington, I've been lucky and I've been in a job that I know is receiving equal payment, and I feel like as a Hispanic woman, I'm in one of the lowest demographics for payment. Like if you look at how much a white male is getting compared to black women, black men, Hispanic females, the gap is there, and the policies he's been discussing haven't talked about what he plans on doing to bridge the gap or to do anything with he hasn't even acknowledged that the gap is there, and I think that's the problem. You can't fix a problem if you pretend it doesn't exist.
Do you think this is something that we fix from the small local communities up, or do you think there needs to be major change on the national level?
Well, as a person who's lived both in liberal Arlington and very conservative Omaha, Nebraska, I can say here, if you start small, it's going to work. If you do it in New England, if you do it in California, that works. But in places like Nebraska, in places like the South, Georgia, Florida, you have to take bigger actions because of the white majority, because of the certain prejudice people have in those areas. They're not going to take action on their own.
So obviously there's been a lot of sentiment of we have to get something done, there has to be some change, and especially after this election we've been seeing that. But has this sentiment always been there? Has it always been hiding there and we just needed this new president or this kind of something different to spark that and catalyze that fervor? Or do you think that this is something completely new that only this new president has inspired?
Well, I think that this kind of growing brink and him becoming president, I think definitely was a catalyst for it. I think that he was elected because there was this growing divide in our country, whether it being between Democrats and Republicans, race relations. It was always growing. It was growing bigger and bigger. He was the tipping point. He was the fly that broke the camel's back. He and now I think that my major philosophy is that everything happens for a reason, and I think maybe his presidency can bring about unity, can actually change things that maybe weren't going to happen with a Democratic leader, someone that didn't have as much animosity surrounding them.
Sorry, I just have a question.
Yeah.
But has his presidency created more unity, or has it just deepened the divide and increased the unity on each side? because I don't feel any closer to the more conservative side of the country. If anything, I feel more isolated from it.
Well, I actually kind of think that there's unity for both sides, because even Republicans don't really agree with this guy. You know, even though he is the Republican candidate, he was the Republican candidate, many Republicans were like, no, he's so far right that, you know, extremes on both sides are bad, in my opinion, because we can't find common ground through that. And I think that through these marches, through people becoming like more aware, I actually do believe that there is more unity. And I think throughout the years, since it's been almost 100 days, I think that's going to continue to grow slowly, but I think it will.
Well, I kind of understand what Sophie was saying about how there is this unity, but it seems to be there seems to be a bipartisan something not allowing the two sides to unite together. And I think that's where the politics comes in, where the Republicans or the more conservative side, even if they don't agree with this administration or their policies, feels like they must unite as a party and can't reach across the party lines because they need to be strong on the forefront of their party. And I think the whole political thing, that really like stops people from morally trying to reach across the aisle. That's what
I know for myself that I've always felt that there was a fight going on before Donald Trump even thought he was going to be president. I'm speaking on like topics of Black Lives Matter. When the first incident I've ever saw was Trayvon Martin when he passed away. And I feel like that was the first big time I've ever seen people get together like that. And that's what made me think like, wow, like this is happening. And I feel like I was so ignorant because we do live in England and there are things that happen at school that I'm just like, okay. But like seeing it on a scale, seeing it as a young Black man who is the same age as my little brother or who could be my older brother when he's going home, that affected me. And I feel like Donald Trump making comments and adding to that also brought the scale to another level as well.
Yeah, that's another question that I have. You know, the way that our new president handles these different issues, and you know, after the school shooting that recently happened, his comments after the terrorist attack in Paris happened, him saying these things never stop, things that seem to be adding more fuel to the fire. Do you think that's his strategy for, you know, the power play dominance, or do you think that's his way of uniting people against some common enemy that we have?
I mean, he didn't start as a politician. He started as a TV personality, and I think that's how he's been treating the presidency. It's not about uniting us against terrorism or uniting us as a country at all. It's about getting attention. It's about being on TV the longest. It's about getting people talking about him regardless of whether it's good or bad. So I don't think it helps unite anything in any way.
Yeah, I think that he tries to instill fear in many people, and with fear, you know, for any American, whether it's involving domestic security or other issues, instilling fear in someone, you know, if you back a dog into a corner, they're gonna lash out, you know. So I feel like maybe he thinks that, because, you know, he's always like, oh, you know, terrorism everywhere. And though we may see it in like few incidents, like, you know, terrorism is a problem, but, you know, targeting Muslim groups, you know, will not solve that. And I think he wants to maybe insinuate fear to make people like agree with what he's doing, possibly, you know.
So the question becomes really, does this fear bring us together? Or again, like Sophie mentioned, does this fear bring us together on two sides of the aisle? What do you think?
So I think that really the motivational power and fear and the uniting power of fear is very limited. I think of Martin Luther King, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. I take that to heart. I think that fear is no way to unite people. I think that we have to give Trump some of the benefit of the doubt in that I don't think he may be politically capable of like making every move to instill fear. But I think that when you look at the people who have successfully spoken to this country in the last 20, 30 years, you look at people across the aisle. You look at Obama with hope. You look at Reagan with Morning in America. And I think that at the end of the day, Americans are not going to respond to a message of division forever. I think that really we have the potential to overcome fear, and I think that we have the responsibility to overcome fear as a democracy. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's a very good note to end for a little break. So we're going to do that, and we'll be right back with some more discussion on the politics and policies of America today. Back to After the March, Arlington students discuss activism in America. For the first half, we discussed a lot about the politics on a national level, and the second half, we want to narrow down more on our community and how these policies on a national level have affected our local community, our school community, and what our students have done to promote the values that we continue to believe in. So, how have you guys felt that Arlington and Arlington High School has been affected by the new administration and new policies? What have you seen, what have you experienced in the past couple of months that are different, unique, or learning experiences specifically after this administration has been in power?
I feel like for myself, a lot of people have felt more confident in saying more ignorant things. They feel like because of our president, they have the right to be disrespectful and the right to act in a manner in which is offensive. And it's sad. It's sad that one person can change the whole dynamics of just a nation, that they can say something, they can be there. Their presence just changes everything. I know for myself, and I know for the club that I'm in, GBS of Can, we've tried a lot. They created the 2 presidents currently, did create AHS Voices United, which I think and I hope that a lot of people take part in, which is a day type retreat. You talk about things going on, gender, race. You learn and you become an ally, or you become someone who's active. And that's something that we need to grow off of from all this prejudice and this hate.
Absolutely, and Voices United was something that I took part in as well. And I think that's it's a program that should continue to grow in the Arlington community because it spreads a lot of awareness about the social issues that are plaguing our school systems, and sometimes the fact that when we focus on education and academics and even athletics, we oftentimes tend to forget that there are things that are happening socially. The smallest things, whether they be, eating disorders or bullying or even students feeling insecure or unsafe within themselves of who they are. Those are things that are happening in the school community, and those are things that we need to be aware of and start spreading awareness. And that's something Voices United, which you said the club started. Yes. It's something great that should continue to go on. Right?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that although Arlington does have a certain amount of great programs that were created to help with the issues that arise, especially now with the presidency, I think the problem is there isn't common knowledge of the programs. I think that's something Arlington needs to focus on. We need to generate more interest in the programs we already have, because the ability of these programs to be impactful can only grow if the administration helps.
Right. And I think that when we often, talk about politics and this administration, we do often only focus on like the political aspects of what's happening. But there are lots of clubs within the school, whether it be, Best Buddies or the Young Feminist Alliance or the GSA, everything like that. They themselves have been working to promote all these positive attitudes and their positive message for a long time before the administration came into play. And now they have an even stronger agenda to continue spreading that message, and I think that's great. I know Young Feminist Alliance did a bunch of things. Do you want to touch on some of the things?
Yeah, sure. Definitely after the election, in YFA, we decided to kind of assign viewpoints of the administration that we are currently under for someone like have a more democratic viewpoint. And we basically had a conversation with each person having those ideas in mind, because I think generally for everybody, it's really easy to stay within our own party lines and talk about stuff that with others that we agree with. I find myself guilty of this as well, like talking to only maybe people that are also Democrat about some particular issue. But I think it's really important to talk to other people who may have disagreeing viewpoints as me, because though it's different doesn't mean it's bad. I have to be able to understand where they're coming from, what they're saying, so we can bridge this building divide.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because something Sophie touched on before was this New England bubble that we seem to be living in, where the liberal viewpoints are often very overshadowing sometimes the more conservative voices or the ideas, which are very much valid, and oftentimes we don't take the time to understand those things. And I think reaching out to people who have different ideas or viewpoints, not only will we'll learn something about it, but maybe we can ourselves broaden our ability to understand and accept things. And one of the questions that I had was, what are some things that we can do to continue to make sure that our diversity is like very much still focused on, and we can make sure that we're like integrating everyone, the different voices, the different everything, race, religion, things like that in our school. What can we do to make sure that our student body feels included? Do you have any ideas, Adam?
Right, so I think one thing that's really huge when you talk about respect for difference and acceptance of diversity, celebration of diversity, is reaching people when they're young. And I think that even at our age, you start to see sort of opinions and so sort of the way we see the world has begun to ossify and sort of harden into a more coherent political ideology. But I think when you can reach kids that are elementary school age, you can really instill respect for everyone in them. And I think that prejudices will learn behavior. And I've learned, I taught religious education at First Parish UU Church, and the curriculum sort of focused on different cultures and different religions and interpretations of God. And it's crazy to see how accepting these kids are and how open-minded these children are. And I think if the Arlington High School community can somehow mentor kids at a young age about sort of the identities and the many individuals that make up our community in Arlington and Arlington High School, we could see positive change going down the line.
Definitely, yeah.
For me, at least, I know in Arlington there are very few Muslim kids, and I think that in our country there's a lot of misconceptions about the hijab, and I think many people think that compulsory hijab, which is being like forced to wear it, which is is in many Middle Eastern countries, versus voluntary, because I practice Islam, I wear the hijab. There's a lot of misconceptions about that. In Islam, like the hijab is to make women like modest, so that people can see like your your intelligence and more than just like the physical attributes. And I would really like to have like a hijab day. There is actually a national hijab day where primarily in California this took place. Women who practice Islam were standing on like the sidewalks of California, having like a large amount of hijabs, so they can give opportunities to women who may have never worn them or have maybe their own biases about them, so they can understand what it is like to walk the shoes of someone who wears it. Maybe they will be able to empathize with women who wear the hijab more. So, you know, bridging that gap, like I said before, is really important. And I would love to bring that to Arlington, because though myself I do not wear a hijab, I would love to experience it, because I think what it represents is very important.
Yep. I agree. Both of you mostly focus on how we need to generate more understanding for people different from ourselves, and I think that's exactly the problem. Not the problem. It's like what the solution to the problem is, that we need to understand we're not all the same.
Right.
That's not going to change, and that's all right. We just need to be more accepting of this, not just as a town, but as a country.
Absolutely.
I also want to say something that Adam said about focusing on the youth and starting with them is something that really stuck with me. My brother's going to be starting high school next year, so I'm looking forward to that, but at the same time, I'm scared for that. A lot of things coming up from his elementary school years up until now, and I can even say for myself, have molded all of us and have molded him and I to be who we are. And I wish that when I was in elementary school, I did have someone that I could ask questions and look up to and say, well, this is happening, but like, it's gonna be all right, you're gonna get through it. And I feel like a lot of kids, they don't realize that there is that guidance there. There is that someone that is like you. And I'm not talking about the guidance that works within the school. I'm talking about us being mentees and mentors and coming together. We need that. The middle school has a problem. And us as the older peers and us as like the top dogs in town, we need to go down there and we need to solve the issue. There should be no reason why 12-year-old little kids are saying the N-word and are making vandalizing the school and saying things like that. I don't even have words. It's just disturbing to me.
Yeah, my sister's a 7th grader at Audison, and just the things I hear her, she herself doesn't say them, but I hear her discussing what some of her peers are saying, and I totally agree. I think setting up like a middle school mentor program,
that'd be great.
Is a great place to start, because if when you're in middle school you're already starting to say these things, you're already starting to graffiti these things onto the bathroom stalls, that's not going to change once you get to high school. It's only going to be compounded.
Yeah, and I think that also, like at AHS, there is a lot of vandalism, and I think that the administration cleans the graffiti, and they absolutely should. But I think there also has to be, a conversation about what is being said and how it is not okay. I remember we had a assembly where this is like unacceptable and we can't be vandalizing. It's like, I absolutely agree with that. We should not be vandalizing. But let's talk about what is being said. How is this wrong? So we can teach and further the discussion of what is happening in our community and where's maybe the root of this problem, rather than just erasing the after effects of it. Let's go to the root.
Make it a learning moment.
Exactly.
I think having that conversation is the most important part of finding the solution, I guess. And it's no easy solution. And having this conversation, whether it's in school or whether it's at the family dinner table and during Thanksgiving, when there are so many different viewpoints, it's very difficult to have, but I think it's very important as well. So what do you think are the biggest issues that we need to be talking about, whether it's with families or at the school, to these kids? what is the message that we're trying to send? Adam?
Well, I think it's very important to send a message. I think when you talk about in school, what message should we be sending to kids, I think that's tricky. I think every kid is different. But I think every kid needs support. Every kid needs sort of someone who can inspire them. Because kids don't want to be bitter. Kids don't want to be writing awful things on bathroom walls. We're talking about bad alternatives here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that and I think Arlington does a great job of this. I think really, however many different things are out there that can inspire kids in our schools, we need to embrace that. I think that's why public education is so special when it's done well. I think that when you can take people from all walks of life with all different values and bring them together to a place where they can have a passion, whether that's athletic or academic or musical, whether you're acting or painting or whatever it is that you do, I think that needs to be fostered in our public schools. And I think that will sort out a lot of the negativity that we see right now.
Mary, what's the message that we want to send?
I know one thing that my grandfather says to me is that behaviors start in the home. So when kids, they act out and they do things, we can change the school, we can change what we do, but it all happens if it's practiced and continued in the home. I know for myself, a lot of kids, a lot of the things that a lot of their opinions they have are based off the opinions of their parents or who's within the household and who is raising them. And it's hard to come out of a shell that you're so accustomed to and you've grown up in being with. And I feel like that's also where we need to have active parents. And we do have the committees with the parents involved, but we have a lack of parents involved in OPAC, I think it's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And we need that. Your children and your kids, you had them. That's your responsibility. Take that responsibility upon yourself to make sure that they flourish in a positive way. So,
yeah, that's true. Sophie, what's the message that we want to send?
I guess at the end of the day, it's just nothing is going to change if you don't take initiative.
Yep.
Because we're all here, we're talking, but if we're not actually going out and doing things, if we're not talking to the administration, to the middle schoolers, to the parents, then it's not going to make a difference. So we need to go out there and just talk.
Yep.
Yeah, be the change you want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. To Niyari's point, I absolutely agree. It's very difficult, especially in like a home environment. For example, like my personal experience that I shared, like being called terrorist, like in elementary school. This kid obviously might not have known the severity of what he was saying, but he obviously got it from somewhere, most likely his home environment. And I think that school is a very unique place because we're all forced to be together. Whether we like it or not, we are going to face each other every day. And I think we can use that as an opportunity, starting, like what Adam said, with our youth and going in there with interactive like lessons, maybe expressing our differences and praising them, you know.
That's very, very true. And I think we've talked a lot about talking to people and, you know, vocally making ourselves heard. But I think there are also things we can do non-vocally and quietly because, again, actions do speak louder than words.
Exactly.
What are these actions that we can take instead of just speaking? What can we do to make people feel included, to send our message across not just by speaking but by showing as an example? What are these things that we can do?
I think take the extra step. In the hallways, I know, put my headphones in, I jam out to a song, and I'm going throughout the day. Me taking out my headphones and creating conversations, or at lunchtime, sometimes I'll sit different places and I'll see different people. Making yourself able to just try different things is the best thing you can do, allowing yourself to be with different people and taking that extra step, because you never know what you can do can brighten up someone's day. So even a hi or hello is the best thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like saying hi will make someone happy. Well, maybe not just Kai, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I think that Arlington, our school specifically, is taking the right steps to, I think, making our differences be seen. Personally, like, I would love to have more discussions. Maybe it's wonderful to have these specific groups that optional, like you can go, but I think we should also have specific maybe days throughout the year where we get mixed up in like different like homerooms or advisories or things like that, and being forced to talk in a room. Mm-hmm. I think that would, make people maybe open their eyes to some things they would never have thought of.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking about this because we're in the same homeroom.
Exactly.
But like, we have advisory.
Exactly.
We don't do a lot of productive things in advisory, and I feel like this is definitely maybe more interesting and more helpful option for us as a school.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a little side note. There are 2 classes that I would recommend to anyone who wants to get more active, which is race, gender, and I think that's the name of the class. There's another part of it, race, gender, and identity, which Ms. Constantakis teaches. Clubs like GBSOK and GSA, Young Feminists, Young Dems, just naming all the clubs, and also Missing Voices. Your senior year, please take Missing Voices. It is a class where it's based off discussion. We read books that are not written by white European men. You read books written by Black women, gay men, all types of people, and the whole class is just a discussion. And I think that's so beautiful because we need that. We need to get out that built, constructive environment and do more than that.
Do you think that this election has brought our community together? Do you think we're moving towards more awareness and towards, more activism and more, acceptance? Do you think this election did something?
I kind of feel that kind of both. Recently, the safe zone stickers have been torn down. I remember Niyar said something that maybe his election gave people the idea that they can say these like awful things. But I also think that we need to go with a different perspective. I know it's really easy to just be like, oh, hope is lost. This is just going to divide us more. But I think that is up to us. Donald Trump may be the president. He's going to assign policies. But we are the ones that can work against that. We are the ones that can come together because we are the change in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not gonna lie, I've shed plenty of tears about this presidency, but at the end, like, you have to keep going. That's our own, like, we don't have a choice. If we want things to improve, then you have to keep your head up and find what you can do. It doesn't have to be like these big marches. You start small.
Absolutely.
Everyone's got to start somewhere. Like, start, maybe not even at your school, start at home.
Exactly.
Talk with your parents. Figure out, like, what problems can you fix within yourself.
Absolutely. I think this election really woke people up. Not in a great way. I mean, there are better ways to be woken up.
Yes.
But really, I think that when you can move past sort of doom and gloom about how you may feel about what's going on in Washington, D.C., you can make some change in Arlington. Volunteer your time, work for a nonprofit, volunteer or whatever it is that you, whatever time you can spare, and vote. Get out there. I think that that's some of the greatest solidarity that private citizens can have is voting. I know we like to think in 2-year cycles, 4-year cycles, but really get out there and vote on everything, Like, vote in this special election, state senate. There's really just so much power in the vote. When communities can rally around it, I really believe that, and I really think that if we can become a more democratic and open community, I think that this election is a heck of a price to pay, but we need a silver lining.
Yep. And again, that's a great note that we're going to end on today. This was a great discussion. Hearing from all parts of our student body shows that people who are different, who have different experiences and backgrounds, can in the end come together and look at a united vision ahead. And I think that's one of the things that we have learned post-election, post-marches, and with all of our coming together, having these conversations, and planning on what we can do to further our unity in the future. And I think that's what's important. So thank you all very much for being here today. Again, this is Adam Deacon from the Young Democrats Club, Sophie Plotkin, Mandana, and Niari. We're all very grateful to have all of you here, and thank you for tuning in and watching our show today. Thank you very much.